जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी। राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी। गोपी जना वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी। गोपी जना वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी। यशोदा नंदन व्रज जन रंजन। यशोदा नंदन व्रज जन रंजन। यमुना तेरा वनचारी। यमुना तेरा वनचारी। जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी। गोपी जना वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी। गोपी जना वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी। यशोदा नंदन व्रज जन रंजन। यमुना तेरा वनचारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन। यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन। यमुना तेरा वनचारी। यमुना तेरा वनचारी। जय प्रभुपदा प्रभुपदा प्रभुपदा। जय प्रभुपदा जय जय प्रभुपदा प्रभुपदा प्रभुपदा। जय जय प्रभुपदा। जय विष्णुपाद परम परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्री श्रीमद अभय चरणारविंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी प्रभुपाद की जय। जय विष्णुपाद परम परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्री श्रीमद भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। नामाचार्य श्रीलदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से गो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरी गोवर्धन की जय। वृंदावन मथुरा धाम की जय। मायापुर नवदीप धाम की जय। गंगा माई की जय। जमुना माई की जय। नर्मदा माई की जय। भक्ति देवी की जय। श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी की जय। समवेत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति विकास स्वामी नित्य नामने। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरुं श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं सागरजातं सगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सगृणिता विशाखान्वितांश्च नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिविकास स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश धारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। सकृतेव प्रपन्नो यस्तवसास्मि च याचते अभयं सर्वदा तस्मै ददाम्येतत् व्रतं मम। हरे कृष्ण। So welcome to yet another session on online reading of the book Mothers and Masters, written by His Holiness Bhakti-Vikas Swami Maharaj, published by Bhakti-Vikas Trust and dedicated to His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So we are continuing to read from section 2, Women Masters or Mothers, in which the topic is arranged marriage. We read 2-3 paragraphs. Shiv Kumar ji has read 2-3 paragraphs, but we thought that better we start from first, because it will be, devotees will understand. Okay, I hope everybody is able to understand me, or sorry, able to hear me. Everybody is audible. Am I audible? Yes. Thank you very much. So we will start our reading. So page number 138, arranged marriage. So before starting, just I want to remind devotees that you can order this book now also, even if in this pandemic we are going to deliver the books. So don't think we can't deliver. So we have given so many books, we have sent. So please order for yourself and for your near and dear devotees, and as well as anybody who is interested in Krishna consciousness, want to know about the gender roles, you can give this book. So continuing to read. Page number 135, arranged marriage. For a girl to choose her own as husband is very risky. Overcome by sentiment and infatuation, otherwise called lust, a young girl does not possess the sober discrimination to understand who is right for her. The traditional system is that the parents carefully arrange their child's marriage based on caste, astrological compatibility, taking into account mental, emotional, intellectual, and sexual matching, and other consideration. Here, sexual matching means, I mean to say, here, male and female. After marriage, the young couple are supported by a social network of mothers, fathers, aunts, uncles, and siblings. And even before marriage, from the beginning of the child's life, there is training on how to remain chaste and dutiful in marriage. Still, in India today, arranged marriages are the norm, although this is changing rapidly. The boy and girl to be married are mutually selected by their parents, or in case of girls, often the girl's older brother or sometimes younger brother determines which boy she will marry. Just as Lord Balaram took up the task of arranging Subhadra Devi's marriage. Nonetheless, often the boy and girl do not choose their would-be spouse. Although in many arranged marriages, both are given the final say as to whether they will marry the other. Liberal humanists deem all this to be inhuman. They insist that one must first love a person before marrying. But what is that so-called love? They love, marry, and later divorce. Love, marry, divorce. Love, marry, divorce. Thus, the phenomenon known as serial monogamy. It is considered a human right to revoke one's marriage contract at will. But in the traditional Indian system, even though the spouses don't know each other before being married, they remain married until death do us part. So, which is better, the cycle of marriage and divorce, or indissoluble marriage, irrespective of perceived happiness within it? The answer that one will settle on depends on the predominant mode of nature, guna, that colors one's consciousness. If one is predominated by the mode of passion, then his interest is governed by the desire for sense gratification. As soon as trouble arises in their marriage, persons who are impelled by passion will naturally seek to abrogate their agreement. Srila Prabhupada wrote, a young man and a young woman meet, and the senses drive the young man to see her, to touch her, to have sexual intercourse. In the beginning, this may be very pleasing to the senses, but at the end or after some time, it becomes just like poison. They are separated, or there is divorce, there is lamentation, there is sorrow, etc. Such happiness is always in the mode of passion. Happiness derived from a combination of the senses and the sense objects is always a cause of distress and should be avoided by all means. So there is a Footnote: in the paper titled "These Boots Are Made for Walking: Why Most Divorces Filers Are Women," Margaret Brining, Brynick and Douglas Allen report that throughout most of American history, wives rather than husbands have filed for divorce. They state that during most of the 19th century, around 60% of all divorces in America were filed by women. After the introduction of no fault divorce starting in 1969 in California, that percentage increased to 70% in some places. As of 2000, it stabilized at about 66%, or about twice the number of divorces filed by men. American Law and Economics Review V2N1 2000 129 169. Brinning and Douglas Allen also report that for the sample they studied, only 6% of the divorce filings by women were on grounds of cruelty. Continuing, but persons who are predominated by the mode of goodness will stay married even if the marriage produces little immediate happiness for them, because they understand that it is dharmic and pious to do so, and will ultimately yield a good result even if not directly perceived in this lifetime. For countless generations in Hindu society, this attitude, governed by the mode of goodness toward marriage, ensured family stability and thus was a major factor in the overall stability of Hindu culture and civilization. But now India is increasingly following the West and becoming predominated by the mode of passion. As Indians come to value personal sense gratification over social responsibility, infidelity and divorce naturally proliferate. Nonetheless, even today, arranged marriages are the norm in several countries other than India. But how long this will last remains to be seen. Within living memory in Ireland, in other parts of Europe, some parents still insist that the children take their permission before marrying the spouse of their choice. But that culture is now completely lost. Everywhere, liberal humanists are forcefully eroding traditional values with a resolve to forever rid the world of theism and theistic moral systems. As Srila Prabhupada observed, at the present moment, mother sends the daughter for prostitution. Find out a suitable man, attract a suitable man. Don't marry abruptly. Just test this man, this man, this man, this man, this man, then marry. Many parents allow or even encourage their daughters to wear revealing clothes, such as tight jeans and t shirts, never imagining that anything untoward, such as rape, could result. Other parents want their daughters to have the best of both worlds, try to instill in them traditional values in regard to female chastity and demureness, while simultaneously encouraging them to pursue in quote, a good career. Such a balancing act often becomes tragically shattered when the parents learn that their daughter has become illegitimately pregnant, or when she insists on marrying a boy whom they disapprove of. In many cases, even converting to Islam to do so. However, well, a girl has been groomed at home. In youth, she will naturally hanker for a mate and be attractive to males. So, to send her unchaperoned among young men runs the high risk that she will lose all sense of discrimination and become mad after a boy for whom she is not at all suitable. Hence, the phenomena of, in quotes, love marriages. In quote, love marriage topic. Modern psychologists stress emotional capability as the overriding factor to be considered for a good marriage. However, while emotional capability is of major importance in the Indian conjugal tradition as well, astrological compatibility is also indispensable. Regardless of the affluence of the boy or the personal beauty of the girl, without this astrological compatibility, the marriage would not take place. According to Western conception of falling in love, a boy and girl should live together for some time to ascertain their mutual compatibility. But how they will relate in the long term cannot be gauged in a mere few weeks or months. After two people have actually married, the initial euphoria recedes, and the partners must face the reality of living together day in and day out. Marriage is the school of hard knocks. As the joke goes, first comes the engagement ring, then the wedding ring, and and finally the boxing ring. And indeed, many love marriages end in acrimony due to unreal expectations of conjugal ecstasy, as typically portrayed in romantic movies that feature invisible orchestras striking up whenever the bliss overflows. Love marriage, a term in Indian English, is based on infatuation, not love, and is therefore risky. If people fall in love and then fall out of love, there never was any real love at all. It was simply an obsession caused by imagination, false expectations, and lust. As a young Bangladeshi described about his experiences in America, they make a show of love. When a man drops his wife off to work, they do this big kiss. Public kissing, even as an affectionate gesture between husband and wife, is unthinkable in Bangladesh. But then they fight and divorce as easily as they kiss. Krishna. In our country, we never even talk about love, and we certainly don't make a big show of it. There is no need. It's automatically there. There's no question of wife not loving her husband. Naturally, she loves her husband because he's her husband. Many Americans ask me about arranged marriages. How can you marry someone you never met? How can you love them? I will tell them, your system is to fall in love before marriage. We fall in love after marriage. The difference is that afterwards you fall out of love as easily as you fell into it. And you think nothing of falling out of marriage also. That we don't do. Real formula for marital success. Previously in Hindu class, previously in high class Hindu society, a boy and girl would not see each other or even know what each other looked like until their wedding ceremony. But nowadays, rather than being made in heaven, marriages are more likely to be made over the internet. Even among ISKCON devotees, physical appearance can be a deciding factor in selecting a spouse. A young boy is given a photo of various devotee girls or vice versa so that he can decide which he likes best, simply based on looks, which ignores Srila Prabhupada's ad- admonition. Admonition. When the wife is accepted as a sense gratificatory agency, personal beauty is the main consideration. The boys and girls meet and may even date to see if their in quotes chemistry is right. I know cases, and probably there are many more, of a boy rejecting a girl of being in quotes not beautiful enough, even if he himself is not particularly good looking. He wants to marry a beauty queen. But physical attractiveness is short lived and illusory, just a covering of skin on blood, bones, mucus, and other nasty things. It is a trick of Maya to think that a beautiful face must indicate a beautiful personality, especially considering that in today's promiscuous society, sex appeal is often used to allure and exploit others. In the long run, it is far better to live with a sweet personality than a sweet face. After all, whatever the spouses may look like, they have to live with each other, and good looks cannot compensate for good character. To have to live with an exquisitely beautiful person who is, for instance, selfish and arrogant is likely to be hellish. The real formula for marital success is that the husband should be responsible and the wife should be faithful and submissive, with both having Krishna consciousness as their ultimate goal. Homemakers and working wives. Should women work outside the home? Generally, the answer should be no. Since the attraction between male and female is the basic principle of material existence, society should be arranged so as to minimize the possibility of sex indulgence. Hence, both for women living in cities as well as rural village women, association with men outside of their family should be strictly curtailed. especially in modern context, a married woman should work outside the home, usually spends more time around other men than she does with her family, and she may also grow to like them more. Thus ensues adultery, the breakdown of marriages, and all of the misery that these two vices engender. Another major point is that women are meant to look after their children, and women who are away working cannot give the children their full attention. In traditional societies, although previously, even in the West, divorce was rare and widely considered sinful, despite there being meat eaters and wine drinkers. Sorry. Okay, in traditions, I skipped one more page extra. In traditional societies, although women do not work for a paycheck, they still may contribute economically. If, for example, there are many women in the home, not every one of them will always be looking after children. Some may be engaged in weaving, basket making, or helping in the fields. It is not that women cannot contribute towards the economy, but it is the best done. It is best done from the home. And apart from economic activities, housewives have various caste specific services. For example, the wives of Brahmanas assist their husband in performing daily yajnas at home. One devotee told me that his wife is highly qualified educationally, even more so than he, but that on principle she does not go out to work. She understands that a woman's dharma is to serve in the home and is happy with that. Fortunately, many other women think like her. Not all are fooled by feminist propaganda. But unfortunately, almost all young girls today are trained for and pushed into the workplace. This is touted as women's freedom, but the main beneficiaries for that so called freedom are the employers who thus acquire a larger labor force and can keep wages down. The scourge of divorce. Divorce is not one of Krishna's ideas. It is not mentioned in the Shastra and was not even imagined in traditional Indian or Hindu culture. There is no Sanskrit word for divorce, but recently one has been coined, Vivaha Vichhed, the breakup of marriage. The common Hindi word for divorce is talak, an Urdu term associated with Muslim culture. Divorce was non-existent in Hindu culture until 1955, when Jawaharlal Nehru, Prime Minister of India, legalized it, thus shaking countless centuries of marital stability. Previously in the West, divorce was rare and widely considered sinful. Despite there being meat eaters and wine drinkers with not even a clue about the high philosophy of Krishna consciousness, almost everyone stayed married to the same person throughout their life. But that rapidly changed in the 1960s when, for example, popular songs such as Please Release Me, Engelbert Humperdinck, 1965, fanned the growing popular trend away from traditional restrictions. Please release me, let me go, for I don't love you anymore. To waste our lives would be a sin. So release me and let me go, love again. The idea is that if one no longer feels attraction to someone whom he married to or is in a relationship with, he should be able to move on to another. For of course, this outlook is simply selfishness. We are meant to enjoy life, and everyone should do so to their maximum potential. So, if a husband becomes an obstacle, the wife should just kick him out, and vice versa. And if they don't like one another, they should simply divorce. Such reasoning encourages competition rather than cooperation between spouses. It is based neither on dharma nor on consideration of the purpose of human life. Divorce has now become a common affair, although formerly one's marriage would continue lifelong and the affection between husband and wife was so great that the wife would voluntarily die when her husband died, or would remain a faithful widow throughout her entire life. Yes. Divorce has now become an uncommon affair, although formerly one's marriage would continue lifelong, and the affection between husband and wife was so great that the wife would voluntarily die when her husband died, or would remain a faithful widow throughout her entire life. Now, of course, this is no longer possible, for human society has fallen to the level of animal society. Marriage now takes place simply by agreement. Dampatye Biruchi Hetuhu. The word Abhiruchi means agreement. If the boy and girl simply agree to marry, the marriage takes place. But when the Vedic system is not rigidly observed, marriage frequently ends in divorce. Throughout the history of Ireland, which until only recently was an overwhelmingly Catholic country, divorce was illegal prior to 1996. Many years ago on Irish television, I saw several women being interviewed about their married life. They were making comments such as, "My husband gets drunk and beats me. All I want is to divorce him." The implied message was, "My life being spoiled by this man, so I should just dump him and find my real Prince Charming. Then I will have no more problems." And now the divorce law has been introduced. People are taking undue advantage of it. They demand more, compromise less often, and are quick to take the easy escape route out of marriage. Nowadays in the West, divorce is considered almost inevitable. Unfortunately, even among our devotees. I was present at a lecture in Germany wherein a godbrother of mine stated that he had been married to the same wife for 30 years, then paused for the expected and forthcoming applause, because for a devotee nowadays to have had the same wife for 30 years is considered a great achievement. A few years ago, at a gathering of devotees in Czech Republic, I gave a lecture that later came to be known as the revolutionary lecture about divorce. The audience found it revolutionary that I had pressed the subject of no divorce. From these few anecdotes, one can understand how deeply sick the Western world is and how deeply affected by it is our ostensibly spiritual movement. Some devotees conjecture that divorce is more common throughout worldwide ISKCON than in a broader society, but no statistical analysis has been undertaken to either support or refute this claim. And by all reports, the use of contraception by ISKCON members is widespread, notwithstanding Srila Prabhupada having described it as a most sinful activity. Most painfully and shamefully, even abortion is not unknown among ISKCON devotees. Krishna. The ultimate aim of the Krishna consciousness movement, to spread Krishna prema, will remain far distant as long as such abominations continue. Discouraging of divorce among devotees. The endeavors of certain well meaning devotees who attempt to stem the tide of divorce within ISKCON might actually be worsening matters, because their methodology is based on pragmatic or phenomenological concepts of psychological compatibility. As has been related to me, such devotee counselors have advised quarreling couples to first try to adjust. Then, after some time, if there is no significant improvement, they may recommend divorce. Krishna. But far better would be to advise devotees to adhere to dharma even if the going is rough, because the alternative is adharma or sin. Devotees who are embarking upon marriage should know the distinction, to know that between husband and wife there will always be some problems, and that especially in the modern age it is increasingly rare to find a good relationship between any two people. But that devotee couples should nonetheless remain together and perform their respective duties in Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada wrote, "Formerly, husband and wife used to live together peacefully throughout their whole lives, but nowadays it is a very difficult task. The basis of family life is duty, dharma. So even if husband and wife do not always like each other, once they have married, they must adhere to their religious commitment and somehow or other learn to adjust. Divorce is no silver bullet for marital problems. By Maya's illusion, conditioned souls presume that simply changing their situation will improve it, but there is no guarantee. In fact, the very process of divorce is often a prolonged nightmare that engenders a long standing bitterness. Divorce is also often a form of child abuse, because children are generally the worst affected by the scourge of divorce. Divorce can be averted. Some years ago in Russia, a young couple visited me along with their young daughter. I had never seen or heard of them before, yet they came to ask my blessings for divorce. I responded, definitely not. I am completely against it. And they said, but we have so many problems and cannot get along. How can we live with each other? I told them, look, you got married and you have a daughter, and you have to stick with it. Fortunately, they were submissive enough to comply, and by resigning themselves to living together, they soon discovered that there really weren't any serious problems between them. But simply by entertaining the possibility of divorce, their mutual commitment had become undermined, and therefore they did not hesitate to neglect and hurt each other. Yet, as soon as they recommitted to persevere, they knew that they must adjust and be considerate of others' needs, personality, and so on. And now, 15 years later, they are still together and are more or less content. The proposed solution of divorce was just manasijam, created in the mind. Family planning and big families. India's most famous propaganda slogan for family planning is Hum do, hamare do. We are two, husband and wife, and we have two children. Or the variant, Hum do, hamare ek. We are two and we have one. The idea is to limit births by utilizing contraception and abortion, both of which are very sinful and were disapproved by Srila Prabhupada. Now, because society has deteriorated, there is propaganda to have one or two children and kill the rest by contraceptive methods. On this topic, Srila Prabhupada noted, in the absence of voluntary restraint, there is propaganda for family planning, but foolish men do not know that family planning is automatically executed as soon as there is search after the absolute truth. And he elaborated, a responsible father never begets children like cats and dogs. Instead of being encouraged to adopt artificial means of birth control, people should be educated in Krishna consciousness, because only then will they understand their responsibility to their children. If one can beget children who will be devotees and be taught to turn aside from the path of birth and death, Mrityu Samsara Vartmani, there is no need of birth control. Rather, one should be encouraged to beget children, with the understanding that many Krishna conscious children are required. Srila Prabhupada encouraged his married disciples to beget offspring. All our children born of Krishna consciousness, Krishna conscious parents are welcome, and I want hundreds of children like that. Because in future we expect to change the face of the whole world, because child is the father of man. Even the generative organ can be used for Krishna. If you can beget children who will be Krishna conscious, then produce 100 children. Otherwise, stop producing cats and dogs. Speaking at a wedding, Srila Prabhupada said, the aim of married life is to produce nice children, Krishna conscious children. That is the best service to the human society, produce nice children. On another note, Srila Prabhupada encouraged restraint. If one does not want more children, one or two children, he should voluntarily stop sex life. But one should not strictly use any contraceptive method or at the same time indulge in sex life. That is very much sinful. If the husband and wife can voluntarily restrain by powerful advancement of Krishna consciousness, that is the best method. It is not necessary that because one has got wife, therefore you must have sex life. The whole scheme is to avoid sex life as far as possible. And if one can avoid it completely, then it is a great victory for him. Srila Prabhupada recognized that the natural ambition of a girl is to possess not more than one child, but at least half a dozen. Notably, Sri Krishna himself begot 10 sons and one daughter in each of his wives. Unfortunately, nowadays, many women feel that to have multiple children is too costly and bothersome. More children means more work. One advantage of having many children is that those children usually learn to adjust and share with each other, including sharing the parents' attention, and thus are less likely to become self-centered. On the contrary, single children, because their parents' affection is lavished on them alone, often turn out to be egoistic, with little consideration of others and assuming that everything is meant for them only. Yes. Now I request some devotees to continue to read. Asita Prabhu, are you there? Asita Prabhu, are you there to read? Hare Krishna, Asita Prabhu, are you there?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, I gave you video access also.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Yes. So, shall I continue, Prabhu?
Dandavad Pranam. Prabhuji, yesterday you couldn't come, huh?
Yeah, I could not come.
Okay, Prabhuji, you can continue.
Okay. Joint families. The joint family entails 5 or 6 generations, up to great great grandparents living together, all brothers and sons with their wives and children. And if each brother has more than one wife, a joint family can be like a community in itself. Whereas a nuclear family places all the burden of motherhood and wifehood on one lone and lonely woman, the joint family provides a supportive group of women sharing the tasks of cooking, cleaning, and looking after all the children, and also keeping each other company. Joint families provide children with many siblings and many mothers, both of which are psychologically better for the children. The joint family system is practically a necessity in non mechanized agrarian societies, for it provides many workers to help produce food and tend cows. Similarly, joint families are practical for those who run family businesses. As a principle, Srila Prabhupada advocated polygamy, more precisely, polygyny. Polygamy is the practice. Okay. Polygamy is the practice of marrying more than one partner. There are two types of polygamy: polygyny, wherein a man has more than one wife, and polyandry, wherein a woman has more than one husband. In common usage, polygamy generally refers to polygyny. Generally, in every society, the female population is greater in number than the male population. Therefore, if it is a principle in the society that all girls should be married, unless polygamy is allowed, it will not be possible. If all the girls are not married, there is a good chance of adultery, and a society in which adultery is allowed cannot be very peaceful or pure. In our Krishna consciousness society, we have restricted illicit sex. The practical difficulty is to find a husband for each and every girl. We are therefore in favor of polygamy, provided, of course, that the husband is able to maintain more than one wife. People have become so degraded in this age that on the one hand they restrict polygamy, and on the other hand they hunt for women in so many ways. Many business concerns publicly advertise that topless girls are available in this club or in that shop. Thus, women have become instruments of sense enjoyment in modern society. The Vedas enjoin, however, that if a man has the propensity to enjoy more than one wife, as is sometimes a propensity for men in the higher social order, such as the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, and even sometimes the Shudras, he is allowed to marry more than one wife. Marriage means taking complete charge of a woman and living peacefully without debauchery. At the present moment, however, debauchery is unrestricted. Nonetheless, society makes a law that one should not marry more than one wife. This is typical of a demoniac society. However, although Srila Prabhupada was overall in favor of polygamy, he forbade it within ISKCON for several reasons, including the possibility of becoming scandalized in the public for breaking their laws in this way. And in future also, the devotees who are neophyte may not understand our policy in this connection. And we gradually could wind up attracting only a class of men who are very eager for unlimited sex life only. Srila Prabhupada also wrote, in India, even until 50 years ago, polygamy was freely allowed. Any man, especially of the higher castes, the Brahmanas, the Vaishyas, and particularly the Kshatriyas, could marry more than one wife. However, polygamy is now illegal in India, except for Muslims. Although it is generally supposed that women do not like the idea of having to share their husband with co-wives. For some, it may be an attractive proposition. For example, if given a choice between having all to oneself a husband who is an ordinary clerk, or of being a co-wife of a wealthy celebrity, many women would prefer the latter. In economic terms, it would be something like the difference between owing 100% of your personal slum tenement or owning a portion of a timeshare in an exclusive location. And factually, polygamy has traditionally been practiced mostly by men of above average means. As a family institution, polygamy has further benefits. As in the joint family, polygamy provides a support system for women and children. It also provides the means and facility for all women of society to physically and legitimately become mothers, and for them and their children to subsequently be maintained and protected. It is also well known and supported in scientific literature that women are hypergamous, which means they have a general and observable tendency to marry upwards. That is, to marry a man of higher social status, superior wealth, power, intelligence, physical attractiveness, and so forth. This is evidenced by patronage of modern commercial reproductive clinics wherein women unfailingly prefer donors who have superior physical and social characteristics. In fact, certain characteristics are in such demand that the clinics will not accept donors who do not possess them. For example, no commercial clinic will accept a donor who is not at least 5 feet 8 inch, 172 centimeter tall, because clients simply will not purchase their semen. Donors who have had psychological problems or other inheritable physical ailments are also routinely excluded because desirable male attributes are not all socially constructed and therefore can be passed on by means of reproduction. Polygamy affords a built in program of social eugenics. In other words, men of superior nature are given more opportunity to distribute their physical and psychological traits throughout society. In a Krishna conscious society, value is placed on characteristics such as self control and religiousness. So, polygamy would facilitate the production of children who have an advantage in their ability for sense control. This is certainly a much better proposition for society than the questionable commercial reproductive clinics. Polygamy was traditionally well accepted in Hinduism, Buddhism, and Islam, and even some Christians contest that the insistence on monogamy is not supported by their scriptures. Indeed, the Old Testament clearly mentions instances of polygamy, but although polygamy is an ancient and very practical feature of human civilization, due to the influence of Christian morality, it has greatly declined throughout the world. In Vedic culture, Sri Rama is the supreme exemplar of Ek Patni Vrata, the vow to have only one wife. Sri Krishna showed another ideal by very kindly marrying 16,100 women, none of whom could otherwise have gotten a husband, for they had already been kept by another man. According to one of my god brothers, Srila Prabhupada's statement that we cannot allow polygamy within ISKCON means that if a man is being maintained by our institution, he should not have more than one wife. Why should ISKCON, as a religious and charitable institution, financially support such an arrangement? He may not live off temple funds. Srila Prabhupada further stated, if they want to marry more than one wife, they must live outside our temples in their own arrangements. We have no objection if he does it, but it must be done outside the temple. In other words, if a man has sufficient economic capability, if he is not maintained by ISKCON but is generating his livelihood independently, and if he is prepared to maintain and protect more than one wife, then that might be acceptable. However, polygamy is illegal in most Western countries. So, for the sake of advancing Srila Prabhupada's mission, that illegality alone could be sufficient reason for disallowing polygamy within ISKCON. even if according to the laws of Shastra, it should be allowed. But many young women who come to Krishna consciousness via ISKCON do not get a husband. So the reasoning that Srila Prabhupada has given for sanctioning polygamy in general society applies also to this situation in ISKCON. Of course, polygamy is not mandatory for anyone, it is elective. Hopefully, at some time in the future, it will be more viable for devotees to incorporate polygamy within their social policy. And for the sake of guiding society, they will then need comprehensive understanding of this issue. An unintended consequence of the success of the gay marriage movement in the West is that it has become increasingly difficult for the status quo to fend off moral obligations and legal challenges from Western proponents of polygamy. Possibly, polygamy in the Western countries may become legal soon and in an unexpected manner. Education for girls, chastity and cooking. Another revolutionary instruction by Srila Prabhupada concerned the education of girls. We shall teach the girls two things. One thing is how to become chaste and faithful to their husband, and the other is how to cook nicely. If these two qualifications they have, I'll take guarantee to get for them good husband. I'll personally only these two qualifications required. Then their life is successful. Ordinary education is sufficient. A, B, C, D. This is all nonsense. So big sound education and later on become a prostitute. Let them learn varieties of cooking. These two qualifications, apart from Krishna consciousness, materially they should learn. There are many stories. Nal, Damayanti, then Parvati, Sita, five chaste women in the history. They should read their life, and by 15th, 16th year, they should be married. And if they are qualified, it will not be difficult. It will be not difficult to find out a nice husband. Here, the boys do not want to marry because they are not very much inclined to marry an unchaste wife. They know that I shall marry a girl, but she is unchaste. This is psychology. If woman is chaste, even though she is not very beautiful, she will be liked by the husband. So train them in that way, very chaste, faithful wife, and knows how to cook very nicely. Other qualification, even they haven't. That's all right. And Krishna consciousness is being trained up. And boys should be first class men. In India, still 80%, 90% are very happy in their family life. Never mind one is poor or rich because the wife knows these things. But nowadays, just the opposite has become the norm. Girls may have a PhD but have no idea how to cook even a chapati. Some years ago, shortly after one devotee had married, he found out that his wife did not know how to cook anything. He knew how to cook one item, khichdi. So he taught her how to prepare that. So one day he would cook khichdi and the next day she would cook. How miserable. He wouldn't even get decent food. The way to a man's heart is through his stomach. Is as true today as it ever was. A man whose palate and belly are satisfied is much more likely to be overall content than one who cannot even get something pleasant to eat. Hence, simply by performing her natural duty of regularly preparing tasty meals, a wife does much toward keeping her marriage intact. Formerly, young girls at home would naturally learn how to cook and keep house. But nowadays, in the name of progress, girls are expected to go to school and eventually get a degree, so they do not have the opportunity to imbibe domestic arts as did their mothers and grandmothers. However, considering that many girls will become housewives, One of the subjects offered in Indian colleges is home science, how to cook and keep house. It is simply insane that girls are sent to college to imbibe what they could and should learn much better within the home. The second point that Srila Prabhupada stressed in regard to girls' education was the inculcation of chastity. Indeed, chastity is central to Vedic civilization, being very, very important for producing good population. The quality of chastity is summarized by Narada Muni. To render service to the husband, to be always favorably disposed toward the husband, to be equally well disposed toward the husband's relatives and friends, and to follow the vows of the husband. These are the four principles to be followed by women described as chaste. A chaste woman must dress nicely and decorate herself with golden ornaments for the pleasure of her husband, always wearing clean and attractive garments. She should sweep and clean the household with water and other liquids so that the entire house is always pure and clean. She should collect the household paraphernalia and keep the house always aromatic with incense and flowers, and must be ready to execute the desires of her husband, being modest and truthful, controlling her senses, and speaking in sweet words. A chaste woman should engage in the service of her husband with love, according to time and circumstances. A chaste woman should not be greedy, but satisfied in all circumstances. She must be very expert in handling household affairs and should be fully conversant with religious principles. She should speak pleasingly and truthfully and should be very careful and always clean and pure. Thus, a chaste woman should engage with affection in the service of a husband who is not fallen. The woman who engages in the service of her husband, following strictly in the footsteps of the goddess of fortune, surely returns home back to Godhead with her devotee husband and lives very happily in the Vaikuntha planets. Srila Prabhupada once recalled an incident from the college days. While at the home of a friend, he noticed a sweeper woman standing outside of the room. She was holding a bucket and broom, and her head was covered. She was too shy to enter while the men were inside. So he and the friend left the room so that she could enter to clean. Although that woman was superficially uneducated and low class, her shyness made an impression upon Srila Prabhupada that he would remember throughout his life. Shyness is a gift of nature to the fair sex, and it enhances their beauty and prestige, even if they are of a less important family or even if they are less attractive. We have practical experience of this fact. A sweeper woman commanded the respect of many respectable gentlemen simply by manifesting a lady's shyness. Half naked ladies in the street do not command any respect, but a shy sweeper's wife commands respect from all. On the other hand, Srila Prabhupada further observed, modern girls are all rubbish, therefore they're simply used for sex satisfaction. No one cares for unchaste women. Like snot tissues, they are simply use and throw. A young woman cedes her virginity to a boy in expectation that he will marry her, but then he says, okay, thanks, it was fun while we were together, but now I have to move on. What is to her benefit if a girl is highly educated but loses her chastity and dignity? What is the value of colleges if they are also places for picking up and using girls? Topless, bottomless. There is regular business in India also. In the hotels, there's a regular business to pick up college girls to be enjoyed by the guests. So many things are going on this basis of sinful activity all over the world. Srila Prabhupada further commented the basic flaw in modern civilization is that boys and girls are given freedom during school and college to enjoy sex life. And modern educated girl means how to become unfaithful to the husband, how to divorce, how to kill child. The uneducated girls do not do this. Victory for a woman from Srimad Bhagavatam. Chavan Muni was very irritable. But since Sukanya had gotten him as her husband, she dealt with him carefully, according to his mood. Knowing his mind, she performed service to him without being bewildered. Srila Prabhupada's purport. This is an indication of the relationship between husband and wife. A great personality like Chavan Muni has a temperament of always wanting to be in a superior position. Such a person cannot submit to anyone. Therefore, Chavan Muni had an irritable temperament. His wife Sukanya could understand his attitude, and under the circumstances, she treated him accordingly. If any wife wants to be happy with her husband, she must try to understand her husband's temperament and please him. This is victory for a woman. Even in the dealings of Lord Krishna with his different queens, it has been seen that although the queens were the daughters of great kings, they placed themselves before Lord Krishna as his maidservants. However great a woman may be, she must place herself before her husband in this way. That is to say, she must be ready to carry out her husband's orders and please him in all circumstances. Then her life will be successful. When the wife becomes as irritable as the husband, her life at home is sure to be disturbed or ultimately completely broken. In the modern day, the wife is never submissive, and therefore home life is broken even by slight incidents. Either the wife or the husband may take advantage of the divorce laws. According to the Vedic law, however, there is no such thing as divorce laws, and a woman must be trained to be submissive to the will of her husband. Westerners contend that this is a slave mentality for the wife, but actually it is not. It is the tactic by which a woman can conquer the heart of her husband, however irritable or cruel he may be. In this case, we clearly see that although Chavan Muni was not young but indeed old enough to be Sukanya's grandfather and was also very irritable, Sukanya, the beautiful young daughter of a king, submitted herself to her old husband and tried to please him in all respects. Thus, she was faithful and chaste wife. Hopeless women become feminists. Men should become first class. Srila Prabhupada analyzed that a woman's desire for social emancipation arises because of feeling hopeless at the prospect of getting a good husband. Srila Prabhupada, in the Western countries, they don't think there is need of husband, but they feel. I have seen one girl, she saw another friend, oh, she has got a husband, whispering. So I can understand that everyone aspires after husband, but there is no hope, hopelessness. This is the position. Every woman wants a good husband, good home, good children, little ornaments, nice food. That is the ambition of every woman. But they are hopeless. Although they are well qualified, European, American girls, they are hopeless. Not to get any husband, not to get any home. This is their position. I have studied thoroughly hopelessness. When we see in our association of devotees, all these girls, they are so nicely well qualified. Whatever they are taught, they immediately pick up. Indian man. In America, they were asking my wife how Indian women are able to keep such devotion for their husbands. So they are actually very much interested and envious of the situation in India. Srila Prabhupada, yes, that is the nature. They want to be a faithful wife, but there is no husband. We have to become faithful. Harikesh. So then they want to become liberated. Srila Prabhupada, yes. Being hopeless repeatedly, now they want liberation. The cause of feminism being the frustration of women with inadequate or exploitative men. The solution is that men should become first class. Srila Prabhupada. These instances are in the Vedic literature, that the wife remains always faithful and subservient to the husband. That is their perfection. Now, the Americans may not like this idea. That is a different thing. But we are speaking of the Vedic culture. Brahmananda. Actually, they are just feeling frustrated because it is a fact that women has been exploited by the men. So now they want to counteract this. Srila Prabhupada. No, we don't say that women should be exploited by men. We say that the man should be responsible and give protection to women. Brahmananda. But they feel so angry from the exploitation that they cannot accept that actually a man could protect them. Srila Prabhupada. That is bad experience. But the ideal is different. Ideal is that man must be first class and he must be responsible to take care of the woman and she should be given all protection, all necessities. That is the duty of man. Just like father takes the charge of his daughter, similarly husband should take charge of the woman. And similarly, elderly sons also took charge of the woman. The father never exploits the daughter, he gives all protection. That is the duty of the husband also. When she is grown up, she cannot remain under the protection of father. She is given therefore to a suitable boy to take charge. But the charge is the same, to give protection, all comforts. And because there is no first class man to take charge of the woman, they are declaring independence. All the men are doing that. They keep a girlfriend, make her pregnant, and go away. Brahmananda. In that sense, we can say that the women are inferior, but the men also, they are not first class. Srila Prabhupada. That we also said that there is no first class men. So if there is no first class men, the whole question is solved. Of course, first class men are rare to find in a age wherein everyone is born as a Shudra. To thus, Srila Prabhupada wanted to institute Gurukul education to train boys to become first class. The shortage of well qualified husbands and wives does not, however, mean that spouses should en masse reject their partners. Preferably, everyone should tolerate and do the best they can within a marital situation, even if it is not fully to their liking. Just as in the example of Sukanya related above, or of Srila Prabhupada himself, who wrote, I never liked my wife, but I knew it was my duty to stick until my sons were grown up. Then I left.
Okay, Prabhu.
So we can stop it.
Yes, Prabhu. We can stop here. I was just waiting for some topic to be stopped. Otherwise, continuity will not be there.
Okay, okay, okay.
Yeah, it is some misconceptions of men. We will continue tomorrow from this topic. Okay, Prabhu? Hare
Yeah.
Krishna. Unless and until if there is any question or something need to be asked, otherwise we can stop here. If anybody has some question to ask, they can ask for the mic access, then I can give, then they can ask, and then otherwise we can stop here. I think that nobody has any question. Okay, Prabhu, we'll stop here. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhebhyo cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.